Let's go. Yo, I'm like an addict, ooh, I gotta have it. I ain't even playing, got a really bad habit. If it moves, gotta grab it. Fuse like a magnet, lose, won't have it till I'm doomed in a casket. I ain't playing.
In the previous lecture, we looked at risk management in general, and in this lecture, we are specifically going to be looking at AI risk management. And so here, I'm going to begin by defining for you the term alignment. And there are two different definitions of alignment that you need to know for the exam, and so I'm going to parse those two out. We are then going to take a very high-level look at what an AI risk management strategy might look like. We will briefly look at the importance of context when it comes to implementing risk management. And we will conclude looking at risk considerations and risk impact and response. Again, there are two definitions of alignment that you need to know for the exam: AI alignment and risk management alignment. Later in the course, we have an entire lecture that is devoted to AI alignment, and so here I'm just going to provide you with a very quick overview. And AI alignment is the ability of AI systems to pursue and achieve goals that match their operators' intended objectives, preferences, and ethical principles. And again, we'll come back to this later in the course. For this lecture, we're going to focus on risk management alignment. And this is when different strategies work together in a complementary fashion to support overall business objectives. And an example of those different business functions would be privacy, cybersecurity, business, and operations. And so let's just say, for example, that you're in a mature organization. You have a privacy office, a cybersecurity office, a business office, and an operations office. Well, for AI risk management alignment, you might have one of two options. One option would be that each of these four offices will analyze and assess AI risk through the lens of the primary office. And so if it's a privacy office carrying out an AI risk assessment, then they're going to be focused primarily on the data and whether or not the data contains personal data or personally identifiable information. And yes, those two terms are more or less synonymous. Similarly, the cybersecurity office is going to be looking at AI through a cyber lens, and so forth. And with all four of these offices, their approach to AI, their way of assessing that risk, would more or less align. A second approach would be to stand up a fifth office, which would be an AI office. And that AI office, and the way that it assesses risk, would align with the other four offices. For example, taking into consideration privacy, cybersecurity, etc. risks. And so that's alignment. Regarding whatever the topic is, all of the offices are going to have a similar approach to assessing that risk. Again, each of these offices may have an AI component, or there may be a separate or new office that has its own AI strategy. And so when we're doing AI risk management, our baseline strategy is going to be identical to any other risk management strategy. That is, our primary objective is to identify, assess, and mitigate risk. The difference is with AI risk management, we are focused on AI. Our methodology is going to be very similar. That is, we are going to conduct risk assessments and analysis. We are going to identify risks through that analysis. And then we are going to determine responsibility for mitigation and control implementation. As you'll see throughout the course, one of the primary responsibilities, one of the things that we're going to be doing again and again, is documenting our risk management process. For example, perhaps we incorporate some analysis into our existing data governance processes. A privacy impact assessment may be carried out on the data that we're using to train a model. Or if we have an existing ATO, or authority to operate process, our approach to managing AI risk may be incorporated into that existing process. Another thing that you'll see throughout the course is that our risk assessments are going to be use case or context specific. There really is no one-size-fits-all risk assessment. And to really help drive this concept home, I want you to think about 3 different facial recognition technology, or FRT, applications. I think we would all agree that the facial recognition technology that is on our smartphones, for example, the technology where, you touch your phone, you put it in front of your face, and then your phone opens, that is relatively low risk. A similar example, perhaps of more moderate risk, would be a facial scanner that scans you as you walk into your office building. And if your facial geometry is in the system, if it matches, if you are permitted access to this facility, then the door would open and you get to walk right in. A high-risk application would be law enforcement's use of facial recognition technology to identify criminal suspects. And so just think about what the consequences of some type of mistake would be between 2 of these examples. With the case of your phone, if there is some type of bug or problem with the phone and your face doesn't open the phone, well, then you have your passcode. You can enter your passcode and get into your phone. And so that's not that big of a deal. On the other hand, in the law enforcement context, if a police officer mistakenly identifies an innocent person as a criminal and unjustly arrests that suspect, then that person is deprived of their rights. And so that is a much more high impact use case. And so here we have more or less the same technology that's deployed in 3 different contexts. But the context, the use case of that technology is what determines the impact, the risk level. And so when we're determining risk, and yes, this may be on the exam, there are several considerations. These include the AI system owner, operator, or deployer, the industry or sector in which the technology is being deployed, the use case, the social impacts, the timing, and the jurisdiction or jurisdictions in which the technology is being deployed. And so when we're carrying out our risk assessment, in addition to the considerations that we looked at on the previous slide, we also want to identify our stakeholders. That is, who are the different groups, the offices, the individuals that have equities in our use cases? Who are some folks or offices, some organizations that may be impacted by this technology's deployment? We also want to look at the business purpose or planned usage of the technology, the potential harms, the training data that is used to prepare the model, and whether or not there are any lower risk non-AI alternatives. That is there a different solution that helps us achieve the same outcome with a lower barrier to deployment? And just a moment ago, you heard me use the terms low, moderate, and high. Low, moderate, and high are very common terms that we use to describe the risk impact and potential response. And so if our risk is high or the potential impact on our stakeholders is high, then we may decide to avoid using the system or to modify the system to help lower and prevent that risk. If we have a moderate risk, then we would implement controls to help, again, mitigate or control those risks. And if we have a low impact or a low risk level, then if the risk level is particularly low, then we may just accept it. We may say, okay, we understand that there's this risk, but the chances of this risk materializing are very low, and so we are going to accept the risk and deploy the system. We may do that because perhaps there's zero chance that we can get the risk itself actually down to zero, that we can completely eliminate it. That may be impossible or just financially unfeasible. In this lecture, we looked at AI risk management. We began with the term alignment. And for this definition of alignment, we're talking about unifying our approach to a particular problem. The examples we looked at were cybersecurity, privacy, and operations, for example. Each of these offices or business functions, they may each have an AI component, or perhaps there is a separate office that is devoted to AI strategy and risk management. When it comes to defining our AI risk management strategy, again, this is going to be identical to general risk management. That is, we want to identify, assess, and mitigate risk. This involves conducting risk assessments, identifying risks, and determining responsibility for mitigation and control implementation. Remember that when we're conducting risk assessments, these are context specific. We looked at the example of facial recognition technology applications. And so when we are carrying out a risk assessment, we have a number of considerations. These include who is the AI system owner, operator, or deployer? What is the industry sector? What is the use case? What are the potential social impacts? What is the timing of the deployment, and in which jurisdiction or jurisdictions is the system being deployed? Other risk considerations include identifying the appropriate stakeholders, understanding the AI's business purpose and planned usages, potential harms, understanding the training data and whether it includes sensitive PII, and identifying whether or not there are any non-AI alternatives that will help us to achieve the same objectives. Finally, we looked at the terms high, moderate, and low to describe our risk impact and response. For high-risk systems, we will generally avoid the risk, and that is not using the system. Or we may modify the system or its usages in order to get that risk down. For moderate risk systems, again, we will implement controls to help lower the risk. And once we get the risk to a low enough level, we will accept or mitigate as appropriate.